This is Brian, and welcome back to this commentary playthrough of Final Fantasy Adventure. I did cut off on a little bit of a cliffhanger because we did just get to the final fight, or at least what I think is the final fight, because we got the second form of Julius here. And I did just level up, so that helped me by giving me full HP and MP. Once again, nothing... doesn't seem like it's going to be anything too extreme here. Just spamming with my attack and curing. As he's taking damage from the Excalibur, certainly. Grrr. Now, is there something else, or was that it? Bob, are you okay, Sue? I defeated Julius. It's all over. No, it is not. Bob, you will never leave here alive. Okay, is there another fight, or is it... But I hit this thing. Oh, okay. Okay, well, I appreciate that they actually at least made it another form here. And he does kick your ass when he hits you. Getting a lot of hits on him, though. Wasn't in the best place that time. Alright, another form down. How is that it? Still have an elixir if I need to. At least one, I believe. Mana tree disappeared. Oh. What am I supposed to do? Sue, my dear. Is that her mom speaking? Mom? Now that the mana tree is lost, we need a new Gemma of the mana tree. New tree? Remember what I told you. We are the seeds of the mana tree. We will be a bud called Gemma, and we become a tree. And the Gemma Knights fight to guard it. I became the Gemma last time. Lost the tree. That tree? Was it you? Yes, Sue. But you are the last member of us, Mana family. To preserve the Mana tree, we need you to stay here and become the Gemma. But, Sue, nobody else can decide for your life but you. So, she doesn't have any kids, though. She's the last one. What happens if something like this happens again? I will, Mom. I will become the new Tree of Mana. But if I am the last one left, when I fall, yes, that will be the end of the piece. Bye, Bob. Please go. I must stay here. Don't worry. I will be here as long as you guard me from the evil. Bob, please guard my daughter. You are the only Geminite for the tree now. I will be withering soon. Please, tell my Geminites that I said goodbye and thanks to them. Goodbye. Who? Bob. Goodbye. Who? Goodbye. And then there'll be a new tree, I suppose. Goodbye. Who? Gemma, the guardian of the peaceful land. The new Gemma must not be lost ever after. We all must keep it forever. And you, Bob, are the only Geminite now. Which one was that? Bogard? Okay, so yeah, credits. We'll just go ahead and go through them and watch the scenes here, if any. I'm assuming he's just going to revisit everybody, kind of. Dr. Bow Wow. This was Sibba maybe then, right? I don't remember who was where. No, I think this was Bogard. Sibba was in the other town where he was frozen. Or at least he was locked behind a frozen door. There's Watts. I don't remember who that is. Yeah, part of the way they drag this out is by having the text boxes stay up so long. That's Lester? The guy whose sister sacrificed herself when she became a Medusa. Playing his harp, I think it was. And there's another chocobo. Okay, well, the one was the first chocobo I had, and then the second one was the one that rescued me, I think. And yeah, had the robotic legs, so now there are going to be a couple, probably. I think more chocobos. The end. Yeah, I guess it isn't a full-grown tree probably yet. It is just a bud. Sapling, as you will. And it's probably not going to do anything else here, so I'm just going to give a short review, and we'll call it good for today. And after the review, I'll discuss what my plans are next for this time slot. Alright, so for my reviews, I just make some notes. If you follow my other content, I just say some things that I liked about the game and say some things that I thought they could have done better and tell you my overall feelings about the game, kind of compare it to other games of the same type. And I don't always give a numerical ranking. Sometimes I do, or give you a kind of a range of where I would put it, at least. So for the positives in this game, some of the things I liked, it was a simple and fun gameplay, I thought. It's fairly generic for an action RPG, but that's what you would expect for a Game Boy era, because, I mean, I didn't have a lot to work with at that point, and there weren't that many action RPG predecessors, I don't think, at this point. I think I was talking about the fact that it was a Mana game, but it was called Final Fantasy Adventure. But as I played through it this time and actually got all the way through it, because I hadn't before, it made more sense that they called it Final Fantasy, I guess, because they did tie in more Final Fantasy type of elements, including having some of the fiends in here and chocobos and that kind of stuff, Moogles. Although I guess Secret of Mana had Moogles too, so yeah, I mean, a lot of these fantasy genres probably just borrow from each other a little bit, so that makes sense. And then I suppose after they saw how this game did, and they just decided to branch off and make the Mana series from it, I suppose. So the next thing, even though it was such a simple and kind of small game, they had pretty good weapon variety, I thought, and it did lend to a few different types of play styles. Like, for me especially, even if I had a stronger weapon, like a stronger sword or an axe, I like to use the whips or the star, just because they had a little better range, and I felt like it could help me avoid attacks more often. I might have to hit them more, but I would take less damage overall. So I liked that style of play up until the end, when we had the swords that were clearly just so much more powerful that I felt like I could just stand in there and basically tank the attacks. And our HP got high enough and our defense was high enough towards the end that worked fine. The level system, I thought they did pretty well in this, considering it was just fairly simple, but it did give you a little bit of a leeway and allowed you to kind of build your character your own way. I tried to keep him more balanced generally, but yeah, you had your 4 attributes that you could just pick which one you were going to put your stats into at that level up. I thought that was kind of nice. Although, I mean, I don't mind either when they just do it for me. So, just depends. It's something a little different, and I'm okay with different once in a while, trying things that are a little different. The last thing I had down for positives that I wanted to touch on was the enemy variety. And I did recognize a lot of them being the same types of enemies that I had seen in, like, Secret of Mana. Or Legend of Mana is another one I played. And I'm sure, yeah, they're just the same enemy types. There were a few differences, like some of the stronger enemies in this game were actually pretty weak enemies in the other games. Like the Mantis Ant, I'd mentioned when I fought it in this game, it was one of the last bosses you fight. But in Secret of Mana, it's the first boss you fight. And like Rabbites weren't quite beginning of the game enemies in this one, but they were in Secret of Mana. And those elephants at the end of this game, I don't recognize them from the other games, but I could just be forgetting them, or maybe they were slightly different, so I just don't remember them being exactly that way. Yeah, not sure about that. Now, we're going to touch on a few things that I thought they could have done a little bit better. And it's more so just nitpicks for the most part. I didn't hate the game. I thought it was pretty dang good. I enjoyed it. The first thing is inventory space. That tended to just be a thing with all of these older games, so I'm not picking on this game in particular for that. It's just something that, yeah, I really wish that you didn't have to. I wish that either, like, your curing items stacked more, or you just had more space. Because, like, at the end, I was full of X-Ethers and X-Cures, and I didn't really need to use that many of them, but yeah. I figured for the space I had, I'd just fill it up with the best items available. The keys, I wish I would have brought more with me at the end because that made me a little nervous. But we made it through it all right. I think if I had to go through this game again, I would probably try to keep like 4 stacks of keys at all time. Anytime I went into a new dungeon. It was fine in some of them because some of the enemies dropped them once in a while, but not that consistently to the point where you could count on that. You certainly wanted to take them with you. And the bronze key and the bone key, I did keep some of those for longer than I needed to just because I wasn't sure if it would come up somewhere later. But it seemed like you certainly don't need to keep it. So that would have freed up a little bit more inventory space for me if I would have just dropped them as soon as I used them to open the dungeon they were used for. So overall, not a killer, just something that I'm griping about. Next thing was I had written it down in my notes as magic enemies, but as I got farther into it, that was a note that I made early on, and as I got farther into it, it seemed like there weren't enemies that you needed magic to defeat necessarily. You just had to pick the right weapon to defeat them. That was still annoying in itself, though. So, me putting it as a critique here still stands, I think. I don't like the fact that you'd have to menu and choose a different weapon, even in the same room, just to defeat 2 different types of enemies because the one you were using was ineffective against a certain type of enemy. Just wasted time, and it didn't really make it harder. It just wasted time, so I wish they wouldn't have done that way. I can see making it take more hits, maybe, but making them just immune to it overall, yeah, not a fan of that. Another thing was the spells. I liked that they didn't take much MP to cast, but overall, I didn't feel like they were that useful. Ice, I ended up having to use mostly as a puzzle-solving thing, so that was fine. I like how they did that. The only thing I didn't like about it was hard to reset the enemies sometimes if you didn't do it exactly right. So that got pretty frustrating at a few points when you had to backtrack like 5 or 6 rooms to reset the enemies because either your snowman, you accidentally killed the enemies because you had either I just did it or the companion that was with me killed them off and I had no control over that. Or you pushed the snowman too far towards an edge and then you couldn't get around it to push it back the other way. So yeah, overall, I'm happy enough with the puzzle mechanic in it, but I don't like the way it was pulled off, really, or implemented. Next, I kind of already touched on that in the last thing here, but when you get a companion with you, since they aren't controlled by you and they just attack at random or do their thing at random. Yeah, I didn't really appreciate that because for the most part, they weren't really contributing very much to helping you because they were just shooting off in random directions a lot of the time or not targeting an enemy. They did it a little better in Secret of Mana because they allowed you to at least change the action grid to make them aggressive or passive or approach the enemy or stay away from them. Here, you didn't have any control over that at all. Now, a caveat to that, I suppose, or at least to take away from it a little bit to lighten that criticism, I did like that you had different abilities available for your characters when they were helping you. Like when you asked them, like that one girl would cure you from being stoned. Sue, I think, would actually just heal you when she was with you. So that was nice. And a couple of them just gave you hints and tips on what you might need to do. So I do appreciate that, but overall, I don't like the way that your companions helped out. Well, because I don't really feel like they helped out that much. The last thing I wanted to touch on, and I griped about it quite a few times when I was in the towns. I almost forgot to write this in my notes, but as I went farther in, I remembered it and I put it in. The NPCs were fairly insufferable when you're trying to navigate through town sometimes. That's the thing in RPGs a lot, I know, is that you get NPCs that get in your way, especially the older ones. When you had a narrow corridor to try to walk through, and you had an NPC or a couple of them that were blocking your way, you'd have to wait for them to slowly move out of your way. Made it worse in this one for the fact that just walking into them initiated their dialogue. And the text of the dialogue moved so slowly that was like nails on a chalkboard, excruciating for me. I don't have that much patience, dang it. It didn't kill the game, but yeah, that was just some of the stuff that I thought they could have done a little better on, and certainly in later games they did, of course. Not going to be too hard on it, because I know this was an early game, and overall, for a Game Boy game, they still made a hell of a game out of this. After this, I would have to rank it as one of the best Game Boy games I've played, I think. Yeah, of course, the bosses were kind of just... By the time you figured it out and knew how to beat them, you just basically had to hit them all in the head with your weapon and just keep spamming attack. So, I don't know. They maybe could have done a little bit better with that, as far as variety or difficulty, I suppose. But overall, I still liked it. I wouldn't give this like a super high rating, but it was still a good game that I liked. So probably somewhere around 7 to 7.3. I think that's fair for this. Not an amazing game, but definitely something I would pick up and play again now that I've gone through it and enjoyed it. I don't know why I never got into it or when I was younger, because I had it. I think I played it for like an hour or so, and I don't know, just didn't draw me in. Or maybe I got stuck on something, which I don't really understand how, because now when I played through it, it wasn't that hard to figure out for the most part. There are a couple of the puzzles that were a little tricky. Most notably, I can understand if people got stuck on that figure 8 thing you had to do with the palm trees in the desert. But other than that, yeah, pretty general as a action RPG, I'd say. Well, that's it for Final Fantasy Adventure. Now, for this time slot, I'm going to be moving on and doing another game. Some of the ones I had in mind, I might be doing Dragon Warrior 2. Secret of Evermore is one that I got up on my list for getting done fairly soon. Or I thought I might do something a little different and surprise you. I don't want to say what it is yet, just because I'm not sure if I'll be able to get it set up and be able to do it or not. So I think what we're going to do is we're either going to start tomorrow with Dragon Warrior 2, or I'm going to have a surprise. It's not going to be it's not going to be a really long game, so even if I do it, we'll be on to Dragon Warrior 2 soon enough for those who are waiting for that. But yeah, we'll see what happens. So you're going to get Dragon Warrior 2 or a surprise tomorrow. Anyway, thanks for watching. And if you've been enjoying the content so far, please like, comment, and subscribe or follow. And we'll catch you next time.